Welcome to all attendees from all over. Please let us know in the chat box where you are tuned in from. I'm Lynette Rudman, and I'm coming to you live from Grahamstown in the Eastern Cape of South Africa. This webinar will be recorded and it will be on our YouTube Learn the Birds channel in a few days' time. So you can watch it again or share it with friends or your bird club if they've missed it. And please post any questions or even interesting comments that you would like Elizabeth to respond to after her talk. Post them in the chat box below. And also just a last thing, we are looking for guest speakers for next year. So if you know of anyone who's an expert in some field, or if you have something interesting to speak about in one of our monthly webinars, please write that in the chat box below for Derek with your email address, and he will contact you. It doesn't always have to be about birding destinations. It could be anything bird related, like if you're an expert bird ringer or citizen scientist or any interesting topic about birds from all over the world. Please contact Derek in the chat box below. Okay, our guest speaker is not new to us. She chatted to us a few months ago about birding in Antarctica. And now she's going to be talking about a totally different place, a tropical birding place, but we will talk about that soon. Elizabeth was born in England, but she grew up in Canada, close to the north shore of Lake Ontario. And she grew up with parents who were very outdoors people and nature lovers. And that's where she learned to appreciate nature. She retired from work in 2017, and she has spent a lot of time globe-trotting all over the world, exploring the natural world and observing birds. I'm so envious. And before COVID, here are a few areas that she visited: New Zealand, Southern Africa, Hungary, Spain, Ecuador, California, Oregon, the Galapagos Islands. I'm so green with envy. Costa Rica, Newfoundland, and then last year she visited Antarctica, Iceland, and Greenland. Now, where is she going to be talking about this time? Elizabeth has just recently visited Belize. I had to look that up on the map. I'd heard about it, but didn't know exactly where it was. And the Mayan temples of Tikal in Guatemala. Over to you, Elizabeth. We can't wait to hear about your tropical birding.
Thanks a lot, Lynette. Yeah, so I was on a trip with Jared Clark and Alex Alvarado. And so we started out in Belize and went through to Tikal. So right here on the my homepage here is an ocellated turkey, one of the most spectacular species I've ever seen. Anyway, here we go. So Belize is in Central America, kind of south of the Yucatan Peninsula of Mexico, east of Guatemala, north of Honduras. There's the outline of Belize right there. It is the only English-speaking country in Central America. So it's actually a pretty friendly place for English-speaking people to go. You know, the rest of Central America is pretty much all Spanish-speaking. And so it can be a bit difficult sometimes if you go to places that don't have any English. But here we are in Belize, and then we made a trip across the border just to the Tikal archaeological site with the Mayan temples. And we just got a ton of birds there as well. So here's all the places we were at. Belize City, Tikal National Park in Guatemala, Pook's Hill, the Jay Jungle Lodge, the Bird's Eye View Lodge, and the Crooked Tree Wildlife Sanctuary. So, and as well as that, I did personally a trip to the Belize Zoo, just outside of Belize City, and got a lot of wild species in and around there as well. So here I am flying into Belize, and that turquoise sea sure looked pretty inviting. At the hotel, in and around the hotel, there was tons of species there. So here's a lot of the sightings. Magnificent frigate bird flying right over the hotel. And these are wonderful birds that are kleptoparasites. They steal from other birds because they're even though they're seabirds, they don't have waterproof feathers, so they can't fish for themselves. So they just steal. So they're kind of fun. Tropical mockingbird, right on a post at the top balcony of the hotel. Fun species to see. They're not very shy at all. Same guy on some of the vegetation that's growing inside the hotel courtyard. And there's a summer tanager feeding on the cactus pads, also in the hotel courtyard. There's lovely balconies all the way around, so you can see right into the top of the trees. A great kiskadee is in this palm tree. And there he is again, showing his nice golden crown. I don't know how many of us knew that great kiskadees have a golden crown. I didn't until I saw this guy. Very beautiful bird. Common black hawk was on this rooftop nearby. Roadside hawk was on the power lines. And now we're leaving the city and we're going up to the Belize Zoo, and this belted kingfisher was hanging out on power lines as well. There was a golden-fronted woodpecker on a tree right in the zoo property. We went to the zoo to see some of the endemic species. They've got all kinds of wild cats there, and it's you know, they call it a zoo, but it's actually a wildlife rehabilitation center. So animals that have come into care for some reason or another, if they can't be released to the wild, they find a permanent home at the zoo. But the zoo is also a wonderful place to see other wildlife. And so here's this golden-fronted woodpecker that was over top of one of the enclosures. Inside the tapir enclosure, there was an ovenbird. Here in Ontario, these warblers are really shy ground nesters. They build an oven nest, and it's really, really hard to see them in the forests of Ontario. But here we were in Belize, and this guy was just right there out in the open. He's got a nice orange crown with black stripes, and so it was a real pleasure to actually get really good sightings of an ovenbird there. Clay-colored thrush is also there. This is the national bird of Costa Rica because it's got a role to play in telling the farmers when they can plant their crops and when to harvest and so on. So that's a fun species, even though it doesn't look like much. It just is very sort of brown and tan color, so it's not exciting. There's a melodious blackbird, which has a really beautiful song. And a rufous-tailed hummingbird, probably one of the most common hummingbirds in Central America. And he was obliging us by sitting up on top of a branch in the zoo property. A black-cheeked woodpecker, a blue-gray tanager, right over the monkey enclosure. And outside the zoo property, alongside the road, we had a white-tailed hawk. Really gorgeous bird, a big hawk. A dusky-capped flycatcher along the wires. And over on the Belize waterfront, a brown pelican was drying out his wings. There's a couple more pelicans in the bay. We just did this loop around the coastline of Belize City. There was a few sandpipers there, it's the least. And a spotted sandpiper wagging his tail. Sandwich terns overhead, laughing gull. There were a lot of gulls and terns. Here's a royal tern. Huge beak on those guys. That's also a royal tern. And more royal terns out on these concrete breakwalls. And there's a sandwich tern with a whole bunch of laughing gulls, I believe. Back at the hotel, there's a hooded oriole female hanging out in the razor wire that surrounds the hotel. I guess they lock the place up at night and make it quite secure so that it's pretty safe, and the birds are hanging out there. Morelet seed eater just behind the hotel. And a cinnamon hummingbird. Nice to see. I had never seen one of those. And then just down the way from the hotel, there's this lovely little creek. So there was all kinds of species in and around the creek. This is an anhinga sitting up there drying the wings. That's a bird that will go right into the water to fish. And there's a female orchard oriole. Northern jacana in this little bit of wetland. And a common black hawk on a palm tree way down there. And right to the left of him is this beautiful green iguana. Really big iguana hanging out there. Sadly, this is the best photo I got of the yellow-throated warbler that was bopping around. Can't see his yellow throat really well there, but it's there. And there's a great-tailed grackle female. She might have had a nest inside this palm tree. Along that little river, a little blue heron. Gorgeous, gorgeous heron. It's much smaller than our great blue herons that we get in Ontario. And a green heron was skulking underneath the bushes. And now here we are at a different place. This is a little bit of an island we got there via a small causeway. Green iguana up in a tree. Not a bird, but you got to throw these other things in now and again. There's a great egret wading in the water. And we looked for a long time to see this rufous-necked wood rail. And finally he came out of the thickets, and he's striding there right beside this object in the water, which looks to me like the front of a fan that somebody's actually thrown into the wetland there, which is kind of a shame. There was a lot of trash lying around, sadly. The yellow-crowned night heron juvenile was just peeking out from the branches around that wetland as well. It was hard to get a shot at that guy, but there we are. So we're off and on our way to Tikal. We stopped for lunch at the Black Rock Lodge in the hills of Belize. So we're far away from the coast now. And they've got some great feeders here. Here's a gray catbird that a lot of us know from Ontario. And it's called a catbird because its call is meow, just like a cat. So quite a fun bird. White-necked Jacobin was one of the hummingbirds there. A really spectacular tiny bird. Yellow-throated Euphonia. Very interested in the watermelon. And this one was new to me, a yellow-winged tanager. Just beautiful birds with these red heads, green bodies, and this yellow flash on the wing. And they were coming in for the fruit on the feeder. There's lots of oranges and papayas and watermelons and things there. Across the valley from the deck where we ate our lunch, there was a pair of white hawks were hanging out on a tree, and after a while they took off. I managed to get a shot of one. Not a great shot, but it's a nice record of this white hawk up against the blue sky. Back at the feeders, an olive-backed Euphonia, a really pretty bird. There's kind of a reddish color on the belly of that bird that really sets off the olivey color. And there's a red-legged honey creeper. This is an immature male, so the legs are just starting to turn red. They would normally be brighter than that. Lots of trogons on this trip. Here's a collared trogon. Sadly, we did not see the ornate hawk eagle, but we did see its nest. So the picture there is courtesy of the Falcon Reef Fund. But we were hoping we would see one, but sadly, no luck on this trip. So I'll just have to go back. So then we are at Tikal. This is the little lodge where we stayed. And we went out at night, the first night, and found a mottled owl over the swimming pool. Very cool. Red Lord parrots were there as well. And next morning, there's a hooded warbler, familiar to many of us from Ontario. We get those guys migrating through. And here's one enjoying the warm winter down in the tropics. Here's a russet-naped wood rail, which really are kind of trash birds at Tikal. You kind of see a lot of them. But it's funny to say that they're a trash bird because they're beautiful and they're uncommon for sure. There's another two russet-naped wood rails at Tikal. We're here in the very early morning, so we've got this lovely golden light. So we're walking around the grounds of the hotels just outside of Tikal National Park. Here's a masked chitira, spectacular white bird, black wings, and this red beak with a red eye and the black mask. Very, very showy bird. There's another one. They're munching on these berries. Not sure what the berries are, but the trees there seem to be loaded with fruit. There's a social flycatcher. Looks a lot like the kiskadee, but the kiskadee has a lot more rusty color on the wings. And this guy just has brown wings. Here's a brown jay pecking away at something on a fence. Swainson's thrush in the forest. It's another one we get in Ontario as well. And here's our magnificent ocellated turkeys. We had a few of these on the in and around the hotel sites in Tikal. Absolutely stunning bird. The indigenous peoples here, the Maya, used to eat these birds, of course, and they would use the feathers in the headdresses and the masks that they made. Really spectacular coloration. So you could imagine a lot of really cool mask making and headdress making from these guys. There's another one. We got them in several different kinds of lights, so it seemed like every time you saw them, you saw the colors in a different way. So here's a golden-fronted woodpecker, very similar to the Yucatan, but this one has a lot more yellow on the front of its face. And a collared aracari. These guys were all over the place, getting the seeds and nuts off the palm trees. A plain chachalaca. So yeah, as the name says, they're pretty plain. They're this brown and gray and a little bit of rusty color. When they're in shadow, they just kind of disappear and they meld right into the landscape. Here's an olive-throated parakeet way up on a high branch. And we are walking now down the old Airfield Runway in Tikal. So after way back, I don't know, about 50 or 75 years ago, when Tikal archaeological site was discovered, these huge pyramids were all buried by vegetation in the jungle. And so the archaeologists that wanted to go and excavate the pyramids and restore them, they often flew in on small planes. And so this runway was built right adjacent. And so it's very close. You can walk there from the hotels. And there's a lot of species there. There's a small lake down the end of the runway, and the lake has an island on it. And you get boat-billed herons there. There's a whole colony. And it's quite interesting to hear them snap those beaks. It's a really loud clacking sound. There were crocodiles in that pond as well, and quite a few other kinds of birds around. But these boat-billed herons were really prolific in numbers there. We also got a tropical kingbird there. And there's a least grebe that was swimming around in the water. Another species that's also found in Canada. So they do fairly lengthy migration down to the tropics for their winter. We got a white-bellied emerald beside the trail. It's a little hummingbird, of course, that's got a very bright white belly. There he is again, having a stretch. Northern barred woodcreeper is one of many woodcreeper type birds. In Canada, well, in Ontario, where I live, there's the brown creeper, which is the only woodcreeper bird that we have up here. But down in the tropics, there are many different kinds of woodcreepers, and they just forage up and down the tree trunks, looking for insects in the cracks of the bark. We got this lovely gray-headed tanager in the forest. We had to work quite hard to get a shot of this bird. It was so far deep into the dense brambles there. Back at the hotel, we were having lunch, and this brown jay flew in. There was actually several of them. And when they thought nobody was looking, they would swoop in to the restaurant, which, in tropical countries down there, there's no walls on the restaurants. You just are under a roof. And so you've got open walls, basically. There are no walls. It's just an open roof. So these brown jays would swoop in and steal packages of ketchup off of the little condiment stand on the table. And then you'd see them pecking the ketchup package open and supping on their red nectar. So I guess they liked it for that reason, supplementing their diet with junk food. Anyway, so then we went to the temple area, and so you've got these immense palaces and temples that back 100 years ago were basically buried by vegetation. There were trees growing all over them, and so they had to be rediscovered. And so there we've got a red lord parrot hanging around in the grounds. There's still a lot of trees around the temples. And so we had quite a show from a variety of parrots. In this tree, we've got a black-crowned titira, the white bird with the black wingtips and a bit of black on the tail and a black crown on the head. So a little bit difficult to see there, but he's there. We also had these white-crowned parrots that were feeding on some kind of plant that had seeds that looked like a pea pod. Not sure what that was. Anyway, another spectacular parrot that you could see from standing on one of the palace decks. This is a family grouping of the Mayan people. There were quite a few of them that came to, I guess, visit their ancient heritage. It's kind of a spiritual place for the Mayan people. And so they're all wearing their traditional clothes. The women are anyway. And they're very proud to have embroidered and done all the finery on their clothing. So very colorful and very proud looking people. So there's one of the main temples in the main plaza, and you can see some more Mayan ladies sitting under the tree there. Some of the temples have a staircase that you can climb up the back. We didn't actually have time to do that because we were looking for birds. But just to give you an idea, those steps going up were really, really high steps. So it was actually very difficult to climb those. But you can imagine what it must have looked like to the early archaeologists who were trying to uncover the temple that was grown over with vegetation. It took them a long, long time. Here's a few more of these Mayan ladies, and they've got beaded clothes. And we asked them, with the help of our Spanish-speaking guide, we asked them if they had made their clothing themselves. And they said, yes, they had, and they had done all their own embroidery. And apparently this is the clothing they wear on a daily basis. And so it's not special just because they came to Tikal, to their heritage site, but they wear this clothing all the time. Anyway, these ladies were absolutely delightful, and we had a translated conversation with them, which was lovely. There's another of the big temples. And then right around the temples, we found this keel-billed toucan right close to one of the big temples. And then we went to find the orange-breasted falcon, one of the rarest birds of prey in the world. There's fewer than 30 pairs in Guatemala and Belize. And that it's a long way away, so that's a very fuzzy photo, zoomed in big time. And here's my good friend Jared Clark, who was one of the guides on the trip. And if you look into his phone there, he's digiscoping the falcon on the side of the pyramid way through that forest. You can see how far away it is. And so to get that photograph is pretty tricky. There's another shot that I did get from my phone. But it was really, really special to see this bird. And later on, I think it was a day or two later, that we were walking down a trail and actually had one fly right over us over the trail. Really neat to see. They're very, very fast flyers. There's our group. We are all trying to see that bird and get good looks at it. Back near the hotel, we've got a limpkin in the wetland. Lovely big bird. And in the forest, a bright-rumped attila. Another bird that's really hard to photograph in this dark forest. A wood thrush, also one that occurs in Ontario, and it's come down here to spend the winter. A pale-billed woodpecker. I was basically on the ground trying to get this guy. He was very low on this tree, and there was only one tiny window to see through, but there he is. Some more ocellated turkeys. This one's fluffing up his feathers and having a bit of a shake. And in the forest, a red-throated ant tanager. Very pretty bird, reminiscent of our northern cardinal, but quite a different bird. And there's an ivory-billed wood creeper, another one of these birds that forages up and down tree trunks. There's a black-throated shrike tanager. And a squirrel cuckoo. Love these guys. They have such a long tail and with these white spots on the end of the tail. They're quite fun. And a white-whiskered puffbird greeted us. Yeah, they obviously like to puff themselves up. But again, very hard to spot in the forest. I was very glad we had Alex Alvarado along, who is totally expert at spotting these guys. There's a slaty-tailed trogon and a black-headed trogon. There's a northern putu, and these guys just look, their camouflage is so perfect. They will just sit on a broken branch and pretend they're an extension of the tree. And right at the top of the head there on the left, you can actually see his beak, and sort of middle right on the top, you can see a dark patch, which is actually his eye. He's sleeping in the day because, of course, this is a night bird. So yeah, we looked around and looked around. We knew the putu was there. We'd been told he was there roosting, but it took quite a while to actually get eyes on him. But it was Jared Clark that spotted him. Jared's got wonderful eyes for spotting these guys. Here's a northern chiffornis and a bare-throated tiger heron. We are back now down at that lake at the end of the airfield. And we're doing a night hike. So there's a common paraki on the path near the lake. They fly so quietly, you really don't hear them. They're just very silent flyers. But around the lake, we had sightings of this bat falcon going around and around and around the lake, trying to get insects that were inhabiting that area. So this bat falcon came and perched right above us. We put a flashlight on it for a minute or two, and so we got some pretty cool photographs. Also out on that island where the boat-billed herons were, there was an agami heron on this particular night. So again, flashlight in use to get some pictures of this guy. Beautiful colors, you know, this pink and purple and light blue. Just a lovely bird. Gartered trogon the next day, and so you can see all the black and white under feathers on the tail. That's how it gets its name, gartered trogon. And we were hiking in the forest, and this Mayan ant thrush came out of the forest and then saw us and did the rabbit thing, acting like we couldn't see it. So it just sat there for the longest time, being silent and unmoving on the floor of this little clearing. So we got really good looks and photographs of this Mayan ant thrush. We're leaving now to go back to Belize, and we stopped at the Melshore Wetlands just before the border between Guatemala and Belize. And this is a huge wetland, and so here we have a group of American coots. There were blue-winged teals there as well, great egrets and northern jacanas. Another northern jacana and an osprey overhead. Black-bellied whistling ducks were leaving. This place was also amazing for butterflies, but that's another presentation. Then we went onward to Pook's Hill, to Jade Jungle Lodge. And they have their very own Mayan archaeological site there. And my cabin was the middle one over there. And so I had a view out my window of this Mayan ruin that had been excavated. But we didn't spend a lot of time in our cabins because we were birding. Here's another gartered trogon that we got from the amazing elevated treetop walk that they have there. There he is again. Keel-billed toucan was busy getting the palm nuts. There's a black-headed trogon down in the field. Oh, and now we're going up to Mountain Pine Ridge to the Slate Creek Lookout. Bad road, turn around, it says. Well, we went the other way, and we went to a cliff where we saw this king vulture roosting off the cliff. And there he is in flight on the right. Spectacular bird, unmistakable with the white body, black head, and black wingtips and black tail. And then, of course, the red beak and front of face. There was a great black hawk overhead, quite unmistakable because of the white band around the tail. There's a black vulture. Lots of big birds of prey here. We're looking out over an enormous valley with lots of good updrafts. In the bushes right on the cliff edge, there was a black-faced grosbeak and an acorn woodpecker along the trail. Now, this rusty sparrow, we stopped at a place that was almost like a desert on our way back, a very, very dry place. And this rusty sparrow was hanging out there and gave us some superb looks. Just a beautiful little brown job at the rusty peak on his head, the little crest there, was very showy. And a little further along that road, we stopped at some waterfalls for lunch and got this dusky-capped flycatcher. Beautiful little bird. Look at that lovely yellow on the belly and that dark gray crest on the head. We also got there Grace's warbler, several sightings of Grace's warbler. And this is a warbler that we do not see where I live in Canada, so this was a wonderful lifer for me. There was an azure-crowned hummingbird, terribly backlit, sadly. So that's the best we could do with that guy. Black-throated green warblers. We see them during migration in Ontario. In southern Ontario, they migrate through to northern Ontario where they breed. So this was a familiar bird to us, but nice to see him in the tropics. And there's a golden olive woodpecker far away over the parking lot and the road, and but he gave us some quite nice looks too. So we're now at the Green Hills Butterfly Ranch in Belize, and we've got a white-necked Jacobin female here, and she has this lovely turquoise color on her head and shoulders. And here's a wedge-tailed saber wing. They had feeders at the Butterfly Ranch, so it was nice to see them. And the butterflies, as I said, that's a different presentation, sorry. Here's a nice shot of a white-bellied emerald coming into the feeders. And a long-billed hermit. These guys are pretty impossible to get sitting on a branch, so your only chance is really at the feeders. Back at the Pooks Hill the next morning, we've got a walk along the canopy walk, and spectacled owls were calling back and forth. There was a pair of them. We only got eyes on one, but it was really lovely. You had to jockey a lot to get a nice window between the tree branches, but I think we managed to get a few nice pictures of this guy. And they look so sad, but apparently he was quite happy because he was calling back and forth to his mate, who was probably about 10 yards behind in the forest. Another collared aracari. These guys are quite social. They will come into the feeders quite easily. And there we got a slaty-tailed trogon. So that was kind of fun as well. Nice colorful underbelly on that one. Another ivory-billed wood creeper going up the tree trunk here. And a black-cheeked woodpecker. Dusky antbird. And this was a really nice one, a crimson-collared tanager. Tanagers down there are just so amazing and colorful. Here's a rufous-breasted spine-tail. I like the kind of beard this bird has. Here's a white-collared manakin right inside a thicket of a hedge, but we found a tiny window to get through. Keel-billed toucans in the mist over the valley. And this one was kind of playing with his food, knocking back the seeds off the tree he was in. And we went to visit a shrimp farm that had a lot of shallow pools. So these birds were just loving it there. Here's a snowy egret. And here's a great egret, and you can see the difference. The snowy has kind of yellow legs, and the great has black legs. American avocets were there too, with these huge upcurved, what do they call that? Recurved bills, right? Yeah. Black-necked stilts were also there. These are very cool, these black and white with the pink legs. I love these guys. There's another one. Just shows you how long those legs are. And here's a whole flock of avocets with teals and stilts. So blue-winged teals and the stilts and the avocets. There's a tricolored heron striding away. Really tall these birds are. And a fork-tailed flycatcher gave us a really great show with that long tail of his. And we went now to Crooked Tree Wildlife Sanctuary, and here we got another russet-naped wood rail. And here's a gorgeous, gorgeous vermilion flycatcher, one of the brightest red birds you'll ever see. And there's well, that was the male, right? The full red. And then here's the female that's got red underneath. So that's also a really, really pretty bird, not quite as showy as the male. Another tropical mockingbird there. They are pretty common. And so this one gave us some pretty good looks. Yellow-throated warblers were all over the place, and they were right around the restaurant at Crooked Tree, just bopping around, foraging all over the place. Ruddy ground dove, lots of those at Crooked Tree as well. Well, all over the place, yeah. And the yellow-headed parrot up in the treetops. And then we went on a hike to find the Yucatan jays, and we found quite a few of them. The adults don't have this yellow eye ring, so they're not nearly as pretty. But here's a whole family of young ones that are foraging. So yeah, the yellow beak and the yellow eye ring are the young birds. Here's some acorn woodpeckers. They're using this hydropole as basically an apartment building. It's got holes all up and down it, and so they're having a great time in their colony, flying in and out to the young. There's another one that's on the side of the track that we're walking on, and he's actually foraging. He's finding things that he has previously stashed in the rotting logs. So he was quite happy to knock back a few of these berries or nuts that he had cached from previous times. The acorn woodpeckers have this habit of stashing food in holes that they have drilled in trees or rotting logs or stumps or something. So they have all these caches of food all over the place. We are now going somewhere else. Ringed kingfisher female on this fence. And black-cowled oriole doing a bit of gymnastics. This is the best photo I got of this one. This lemon-colored lower belly is really pretty on this one. And here's the Yucatan woodpecker. Yeah, we're still walking down these trails in this very dry forest outside Crooked Tree. Yeah, lots of pine and scrub around there, but it's very dry, very sandy. So the Yucatan woodpeckers are only found in the Yucatan and a few places in Belize. So it was nice to see these guys. There's another one. And another one. They have this cute little yellow spot right above the beak. Tropical kingbird, very common down there. And this is Crooked Tree is on this enormous wetland nature reserve. And so these are the boats we're going to be on the next day. We're going out to explore the wetlands. So there's some mangrove swallows right by the boat dock, and a black vulture, and pied-billed grebe was very visible from the boat dock. These guys occur in Ontario as well. They breed where I live in Ontario, so nice to see one taking vacation in the tropics. So here we are on the boat right now the next morning, and we've got a black-collared hawk hanging out right beside our channel. There he is again. A snail kite overhead. We saw several of these, and that amazing hooked beak they have is really specialized for getting snails out of their shells. So there's another one, and you can see that magnificent hooked beak right there. This is a bird we were searching for quite a while from the boat. yellow-breasted crake, really uncommon and quite rare, and almost impossible to see. But we got one, courtesy of our lovely guide and boat driver at Crooked Tree. Great blue heron also occurs widely across North America. And again, nice to see one taking a holiday in the tropics. There he is. Long neck is amazing. They tuck it in when they fly. So it becomes like a hook shape when they fly, like a bend in a piece of wire. Wood storks are flying overhead. Huge birds. Another anhinga in a tree. A boat-billed flycatcher. You can see the hook on the end of his bill. Northern jacanas, quite a few of them. And a bare-throated tiger heron in a tree. These pictures are all taken from the boats. White ibis flew overhead. And there's the wetland at dusk at Crooked Tree. But we're still out there. And so here's a snail kite bringing a snail home for dinner right at the end of the day. And here's a limpkin with a snail as well. And there's a snail kite with a snail. So he's going to be holding that in his claws and trying to get the snail out for his dinner. And there he is. There was a common gallinule there, immature, trying to hide from us. A Couch's kingbird was really nice to see. That was a lifer for me. Hadn't seen one of those before. And a sungrebe, that was also a lifer. I'd looked for these in Costa Rica with guides there, but we never found one. But we got one here in Belize at Crooked Tree. There's a black-cowled oriole up there. And another really good view of a black-collared hawk. He didn't much like us being there. Another anhinga, just about to take off from that tree. And an olive-throated parakeet. There's a pair of them. Rose-breasted grosbeak female. I think it was still in the boat here, going down these little water roots within the mangrove forest. And anyway, rose-breasted grosbeaks, a nest in Ontario, so we've seen them near our home. And here we go to Belize and see them again. Same thing with palm warblers. They're pretty common at migration time through Ontario. As another tropical kingbird. And a groove-billed ani. This is actually the next day back at Crooked Tree, and we're going for a walk around the neighborhood. I've got a whole little flock of black-bellied whistling ducks. Another squirrel cuckoo. Looks pretty beautiful in the morning light. And there's one down on the ground foraging and up in a tree. Rose-throated bighorn was another lifer for me, really spectacular with that pink throat. And roadside hawks are fairly common all over the tropics. And here's two of them in one place. I don't think I'd ever seen two before. Two together, that is. They generally are only seen one at a time. Here's a Morlet's seed eater, quite variable in their plumage, these guys are. And here's a rufous-browed pepper shrike. Sorry, it's not well focused, but that's the only shot I got. Ferruginous pygmy owl, lovely little small owl. They're quite fun to see. And back on another desert hawk, we've got this Aplomado falcons, a pair of them that were really far away, but I was actually the one that spotted them, looking between some trees, and off in the far distance, these guys were hanging out on a tree, and I said, "Oh, what are those?" And the Alex, our guide, said, "Oh, you got Aplomado falcon. That's really cool." So the pictures, of course, are zoomed in really far. There's another roadside hawk looking for mice over the desert or voles or something. Yellow Lord parrots. These guys are funny because they've got this big white patch right on the top of their head, and it disappears into a white sky. So you think they've got flat heads, but no. And end of the day, we've got common paraki right in the courtyard of the hotel. And I fell asleep that night listening to the common paraki call. Lovely. Next morning, really early, snowy egret right outside the hotel. Female vermilion flycatcher. There she is right up in this bare tree. Red Lord parrot. I don't know why they don't call it a blue-headed parrot, because it's got a lovely blue crown. Green heron in the wetland. A yellow-breasted chat. Occasionally seen in Ontario, but sure is a rarity up here. I did see one in Ontario a couple of years ago, but now we've got them in the tropics and got good pictures. Orchard oriole also breeds in Ontario, but uncommon there. And here's our group. We're heading home on our last day at Crooked Tree. And that is the end of the presentation. Thank you very much. Do we have Lynette?
Yes, I'm here. Thanks
Okay.
so much. That was absolutely fantastic. I enjoyed it so much. I'd never seen any of those birds, but it's amazing how bright they are. You know, the colors are bright and beautiful, really great.
Yeah, I just want to bring to everybody's attention, I am in fact wearing toucan earrings today, so for the occasion, yeah.
Okay, we do have some questions. David was asking if you found these birds on your own, but you did mention that it was an organized tour. Was it a special
Yeah.
birding tour?
Yes, it was a birding tour. It was through Eagle Eye Tours, and the guides were Jared Clark and Alex Alvarado, and they were absolutely magnificent guides that did a stellar job of finding some of these amazing rare species. I see that Jared is actually here watching this presentation. Hello, Jared.
Okay, and then Faraz said a gami is the most beautiful heron on earth. Maybe a future debate.
It's really an amazing heron. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've seen it a couple of times. I saw them in the Amazon as well in this past August. And so yeah, you think you've died and gone to heaven when you see those.
And then Deborah asks, would you please repeat where you found many boat-billed herons?
The boat-billed herons were on a pond at the end of the airfield, the old airfield trail at Tikal. So basically you leave your hotel and you walk, and you kind of walk past all the hotels and go down a road, and it ends up being a single lane track all the way through the jungle, through the rainforest. And it's all the way at the end of there that there's a little pond. And it was quite startling when we first arrived there, because there was an enormous crocodile that was right on the shore. And so we had to stand back for a while until the crocodile left, and then we could go up to the water's edge to actually see the species. And there's an island in that little lake, little pond that had all the boat-billed herons on it. So it's a whole colony there. And they're noisy as all get out. They just clap their beaks, all the time. It's very funny.
And Caroline asks, well, she says Belize is still high on her wish list.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful photos. What gear do you use? What camera and
Oh, I have an amazing camera. It's actually a bridge camera. So I don't change the lens on it. It's a Sony RX10 Mark IV. And it has a lens that goes from 24 to 600 millimeters.
Wow.
And it's all on this one compact unit. It's really great for traveling, because you're not carrying around extra lenses. You're not having to change lenses. You can just react very, very quickly to your sightings, and hopefully, zoom in and get the shots that you need. So yeah, I just find it an amazing camera, and I love it.
Yeah, it seems quite handy if you're doing a tour like that and you haven't got big lenses and that carrying around.
Oh yeah, no big gear to carry around. Yeah, I just have this one camera unit on my person at all times, and I probably use it more than I use binoculars.
Yeah. And then David asks again, what percentages of your photos were from a camera and what with a phone?
None of these were from my phone.
And somebody called iPad, I don't know what his name is. So sorry I joined late, but the birds in the last 20 minutes were unbelievably beautiful. Brilliant photography. Thank you so much. I will look forward to watching you on YouTube. Are there any more questions? Please pop them in the chat box quickly before we wrap up. It doesn't look like there anymore.
Okay.
Yeah, I just want to say thanks, Elizabeth, for another stunning presentation. We look forward to seeing you again next year.
I see there's a couple more comments just came in the chat. Let me just see those before we wrap.
Yeah, David's asking, what is the tour company's name again?
It was Eagle Eye Tours.
Eagle Eye Tours.
Yeah. Yeah.
Are they based in Belize or?
No, it's a Canadian company based in British Columbia. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I can go birding all over the world with Eagle Eye and pay in Canadian dollars, which is wonderful.
Oh, fantastic. I thought you'd hired somebody in Belize.
No, I do that sometimes when I go places, to hire local guides.
Yeah.
Like I've done that in a couple of places in Argentina, go with local people.
There's nothing like local knowledge.
Yeah, local for sure. Yeah, but Alex Alvarado lives in Honduras, which is he's from Honduras, so he's very very expert, absolutely top-notch expert on all of these birds in the tropics. Yeah. Well, and Jared's not bad either, so yeah.
Just a lot of people saying thank you very much for your wonderful talk. We look forward to your next talk after you've been to the Antarctic again.
Well, I don't think I'll do another Antarctic presentation, but I was in Ecuador and the Amazon this summer, so I might do one of those. I'll, but I run out of time to process the photographs, because I come back from these trips with literally thousands of photos. So you've got to find the time to work through the photographs to get a presentation together.
For sure, yes, it does. Thanks so much for your talk. We really enjoyed it. It was fantastic.
It's a pleasure. Thanks very much for inviting me again.
Yeah. Our next talk is on the 21st of November. It's Newman's Birds by Color. It's a new field guide for beginner birders if anybody's interested in that webinar. I think we can wrap up. Okay, bye.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.